Oh, what's up, everyone? Today, we're going to be working on some GE 3-axle floating bolster bogies. Yeah, so still got some work cut out to do. This is kind of the progress that I've made on this pain in my butt. And, it's not bad. Doing good. Without further ado, I guess go ahead and get started. So we got some news in development and stuff in regards to like the Horizon project, which I'm not gonna disclose too much information as of now, but there's some pretty exciting things to come in the future. So, I mean, of course, as more things develop with this, I'll let you guys know, keep you up to date on it. But right now, things are still kind of up in the air. There's still a lot more work that we need to do in order to get the Horizon project, really underway, such as texturing and whatnot. So that's in the works. Got a little bit of a wait on that, however. So right now, we are focusing on some other projects that we're just kind of working on right now. So this is a GE bearing or covered Hyatt bearing bogie that I'm working on for a friend's project. So I'm not really gonna talk too much about that. I mean, you probably will be able to figure some stuff out on your own, but it's really not my project to give details about, except for what I'm contributing to it. So this is to, of course, help him. And you'll have to also forgive me as well. Kind of had a long night, and I'm just relaxing, taking it easy. Here to chat it up, talk to you guys, have a good time, and all that jazz. So, if you want to, we do have a Discord. It's the Trains modeling server. I got a link for it in the description, so you can go ahead, check that out. It's a nice way if you're looking for help with 3D modeling, reskinning, whatever, content creation. You have questions, we have people who can help you out. And you can talk to people, chat it up, whatever, have a good time. So feel free to join that if you want. But I'm not a cop, so can't tell you what to do. So right now we're just working on the bolts for this. I meant to do clone copy. I know what instance does, but I also forgot what it does. And I mean, I could easily look it up if I wanted to, but for my purposes with this bogie and everything, I need them to just be cloned objects. So yeah. So I actually had a lot of progress done for the version of this bearing cap that was uncovered and exposed. And I realized for the project that this is going on, it actually it needed to be the non-exposed one. So it is what it is. Right? So we're kind of getting that worked on right now. That's the goal. 'Tis the goal. And again, so one thing I do want. So I was looking back. I was sitting at Red Robin's with my family, and I was thinking about some of my YouTube videos. And I know for the longest time, my channel, I've never really meant to build my channel up in terms of making it my living, making a bunch of videos, and being super active with it. You know, aside from doing my couple live streams here and there, some tutorials, and a bunch of other things. Now, with that kind of being said too, I do want to have just a little bit more activity on my channel in terms of like videos. So, you know, one thing I really don't get a whole lot of anymore is community engagement. You know, I say community engagement, my subscribers are part of like my channel's community. And even though my channel isn't a large channel, it isn't one of those channels with a lot of people and a lot really to it, it is a what's the word? It is something that I'd like to kind of be a little more active in terms of actually doing something that's entertaining to my viewers. So mainly along the lines of trains related, you know, simulator stuff and all that. So, anywho, I would really like to have people kind of, you know, give some feedback. Like, what sort of videos do you guys enjoy watching? Do you enjoy these live streams? Do you wish that I kind of condense them more down? And I mean, that's also a difficult thing to do because for me, 3D modeling is a very fluid, you know. There's always many ways to do something, especially in 3ds Max, and it sometimes just becomes difficult trying to put stuff together in one shot, in one take. Sometimes, you know, you have to pre-plan it, and there's a lot of people out there who do a really good job at pre-planning their builds. Unfortunately for me, I don't really work that way, because again, it's a very fluid sort of situation that happens. It's a very, you know, ever-changing. So for 3D modeling videos, it's easier for me to do these live streams, kind of talk about what's going on and explaining things and whatnot, and just doing it live and saying, oh, hey, I made a mistake, so we're actually going to go back and fix it, you know. So stuff like that, it's been easier for me to do it in that sort of fashion. But I mean, in terms of like tutorials, I know there's a reskinning tutorial that I need to get out, It's ironic though, because I don't do a lot of reskinning anymore, but there are some tutorials I'd like to sort of put out on that, kind of revamp, if you know what I'm saying. So all of this to really just say, tell me what you guys enjoy, what you don't enjoy, what you want to see, what you don't want to see, stuff like that. I mean, just sort of, I want to have a little bit more engagement. Again, understanding too, as well, that my channel isn't going to be this big deal sort of channel. You know, if it blows up, it blows up and it's awesome. You know, it's icing on the cake. But for the most part, that's like the least of my concerns for this channel. If you kind of catch what I'm saying there. Not trying to be big, but the community that I have, I'd like to be sort of a little bit more engaged with, and actually putting out some videos that, you know, like are actually entertaining for people, instead of kind of like, oh, I think this is entertaining, I think people want to look at this and all of this. You know, again, it's ain't my first major deal to worry about, like, oh, I need these subscribers, I need this many people to like my stuff. You know, not trying to be liked. But for the people that do enjoy my content and everything, you know, I'd like to kind of have that engagement with them. If you know what I'm saying there. Also, forgive me as well. So, I can't be in like the chat right all the time. So if you write a comment or something, you know, you have to sometimes give me a minute to reply back to that. So these are actually, this is really interesting sort of piece here. It's like it kind of keeps this in place. I don't really know, but it's a really cool piece to kind of see how it interconnects with everything. I really wish I knew the reason 3DS Max kind of predetermines what it thinks you want, like in terms of everything. Or it thinks you want 3 feet of chamfering, but really you don't. But it thinks you do. Yeah. So a cool little trick. So if you need to repeat this shape on multiples around, there's an easy way of doing it. Now, I am actually going to wait to do that here. I'm going to do an isolate for this. Okay. So I don't need that back face showing. And I am going to have that. Actually, I think this is going to be one of those times where I just keep it. Nah. I'm going to make this super clean. So, here's what we're going to do. So what we need to also do here, so we need to rotate this. So what, an easy way of doing this, because we need to make it look like it's in a triangle shape, what I'm going to also do is end isolate, so we can kind of see what we're doing here. I'm going to clone this a couple of times, and we're going to rotate that around right there. Clone this. And have that right there. And that puts us exactly where we need it to be. Hide unselected. So now what I'm doing is I am setting this up. Oops. Oh boy, so what we're working with. Good grief, 3DS Max. It do be like this sometimes. And there's a couple easy ways around having to do this whole process 1,000 times. I'll kind of show that here. So we're going to attach this. What I'm going to do first here is I'm going to go through and I'm going to weld all of my vertices individually. I'm going to do these individually because I have run into issues before where, depending on how intricate you're getting, you might miss a couple of things that lead to, yeah, so we're still dealing with that crap. I think to get around it, we just need to connect that. Yeah, that works. So it sucks that you gotta do this because it does create polygons, but at the same time, you get a much cleaner map and a much cleaner build overall. So now, but as I was saying, so sometimes you need to weld your vertices individually because you need to make sure they actually weld to each other. Otherwise, you might run into problems when you go to like map it, or you go to do anything significant with your mesh. So this just sort of, this keeps it all in place. This keeps it all going good. Keeps it clean too. Like I said, a big part of like why I'm doing this is because I want my map to be really clean. And if you have a bunch of like individual parts, so if I did that little like the piece, if I do this piece right here, I could do that as 3 individual parts and it would still work, but the map just doesn't look as clean. So it just helps you out in the long run, keeping things clean, keeping it tight. Keeps everything together too. So, that's just one of the many ways of doing this. And learning why is it's a good thing. So now I should be able to cap these sections off like that and not have any major issues. So now that we have this, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna see if I can actually get this to line up with everything else. So I'm going to detach this. I'm going to make sure my pivot is centered perfectly. And then I'm just going to do a quick test. And if everything lines up as it should, which I think it will, then we've saved ourselves a little bit of time. I actually need to keep these, because what we're going to do is we're going to go through and I need the first 3 sort of pockets here. Like that. I'll delete that. Then we'll do the same thing right here. We'll delete that. So now I'm left with this. I'll do a clone. And I'll do that right there. Okay. So now I'm just going to select these 2 guys and delete them. And I'm going to attach all those things, and then to make sure it's all one piece, I'm going to just make sure where I did my welds, that those will weld perfectly. And I think so. That's a mess. And before 209, 178. Alrighty. Alrighty. Oh. Whoops. Completely missed that. Easy enough fix. I'll just do an extrude on this, and actually what I'll do is I'll select these, boom, just like that. Select all, weld, and boom. So this is what we are left with. Now what I'm going to do, I got these weird spacer blocks all over this model. That I can honestly just kind of start getting rid of. Done making certain cuts in the model too, so just sort of starting to get rid of stuff here that I don't really need anymore. Stuff that's just taking up space and polygons. I am gonna need that. I don't know why it's all the way over there though. Oh yeah. Yeah, so you can also see like I got a lot of work done on this design, and that don't matter anymore. There's just a couple different bits and pieces here that really aren't important to this specific bogey. And if I need to, I can always go back and just remake them because it's easy enough to do that. So, alright, that's a journal box that is done. Just like that. And I'm not going to mess with the backside of this too much because, to be honest, you're not really going to be able to see it with the wheel. So we don't need to get super in detail with it. And if you look at my horizon too, the bogey for that, the back of the journal boxes are just non-existent. But again, that's on purpose because there's no reason to have them visible. That's just taking up polygon space, which I can use to give this more detail. So I'm going to take all this stuff here, I'm going to isolate the selection, and I'm going to just start setting up all of the smoothing groups to get that all in check. Ooh, that's right. Got a couple hard edges here that do not need to be smoothed. There we go. Again, for those of you who are just learning 3ds Max or any modeling program for that matter, one thing you might realize or run into is when you're making cylinders, you'll run into these jagged edges, and your first thought is going to be, well, I gotta go and make more edges to make it smoother. That's not true. Typically, 4 edges is good enough to have good smooth edges on small parts and small chamfers. I recommend for very visible cylinder pieces to do either 18 sides. Wheels, obviously, you're probably going to have a couple more sides to it just to make it, really smooth. And then you do a smooth modifier or smoothing groups. And that takes those jagged edges. So like you see on this journal box here, where you can see boom, 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 here's all of that. And I think if I do a render of it, it'll actually kind of show what I'm talking about, where you'll see all those jagged edges and it'll look kind of bad, or it's going to auto smooth in this rendering program, which is kind of false advertising in a sense. But yeah, I mean, you can kind of see it on this top edge. Like, that edge is very, very visible. And there are no smoothing groups applied to that. And now there are. So now you'll see that that's all been smoothed out really nicely. And it looks good. What I might do is give that, well, I want that to have a smoothing group of 1. So we're going to keep that, and then I'll go through here and also give it a smoothing group. So now this affects the shading and it makes it look like it's smooth. So like here, I'm going to go across this edge here. So this is an 18-sided cylinder, but if you're looking at it from the front, I mean, yeah, you can kind of see that, but even if I turn off edged faces, it's going to look like a single piece. Now I think I'm going to isolate this selection 1 down. Yeah, I'm thinking what I'm going to do here is for these pieces, I'm going to give them their own smoothing group of 2. And that will fix my issue that I'm having in certain areas, like right here. It will still smooth it out, it just won't have it connected. See? Still looks smooth, still looks part of the piece, but it's not causing any weird deformation on the smoothing groups. So that's another thing, though. You gotta play around with it. It's going to be different every time. But watch, the gist of it is, don't have a smoothing group connected to itself when you have a flat edge or a distinct edge that you want to hold on to. So if I go and I take this entire ring here and I apply smoothing group 1 to it, you get this really weird deformation because it's saying, well, this inside piece here is smoothing group 1, this outside edge here is smoothing group 1, and now we have this flat face that's smoothing group 1, and it's trying to interpolate it as almost a donut shape. I guess you can kind of see 3ds Max is trying to make it look like a donut when it really isn't a donut to begin with. So you can kind of see what I'm talking about, all that shading issue with it where it makes that look like it's rounded. But it's not. So it can be really weird sometimes when you're doing this. So it's important to pay attention to that. But if I take off that smoothing group, you'll see that it will depict it now as a single flat edge instead of being kind of a rounded thing. So for something like this, I would almost suggest, if you wanted to round the edges, to do that as a chamfer of like with one edge or two edges. But the reason I talk about smoothing groups is because it's important to know that, sorry, my brain's all over the place. It's important to know kind of that you don't have to go all out with edges. I mean, if you want a really smooth circle, you can add 20 to 30 or even 60 edges to it. But there's no point in doing it, especially if you're just going to end up adding a smoothing group anyways. So kind of keep that in mind. Pipes and electrical wiring on the underbody of a coach car, stuff that really isn't going to be seen all that much, can be made into 4-sided cylinders with a smoothing group on it that makes it rounded. And you get away with that just fine. But a good example of this here, so if we look at this little lubricator fill valve thingy, if we have a hexagon shape that is supposed to be like, you can take a ratchet and take the cap off, so that's the cap, and then you've got it put into a cylinder. The cylinder has a smoothing group on it, but this doesn't, and the reason that this one doesn't is if I apply a smoothing group of 3 or whatever, I don't know why this has a freaking smoothing group on it, you'll notice that it becomes kind of a smoothed edge, and it's harder to see the distinct edges unless you're really, really looking at it. But I don't want that. I'm trying to fix the smoothing groups on it now. Because I don't want that top edge to have a smoothing group. I just want this to... No, I don't even want that to have a smoothing group, because I want it to be a distinct... I want it to have those distinct edges there. So, you know, helpful tip is, again, watch out for your chamfers. Certain areas, like on the Bogie, the actual, like, frame casting, I did go a little bit above and beyond with the edges. I think I applied 4 or 5 edges to that. And that's just 1, 2... No, I did 4. And again, the typical rule of thumb that I like to go off of is If you need to chamfer something and you need it to look smooth, go for 4 edges and then do the smoothing group. Sometimes you can do the 1 edge, and that actually is very, very effective. It all depends on what you're modeling and what kind of the goal is for your model. So keep that in mind when you're doing all your modeling stuff and you're preparing everything. So again, good rule of thumb. Don't have to follow it if you don't want to, but you know, if we're looking at things I wish I knew before, and actually I knew about smoothing groups before, I just didn't understand smoothing groups as well as I do now. So, you know, kind of, it is what it is, but it's nice to be able to have someone explain it and be like, hey, your smoothing groups are as important as the actual model itself, because it can really make or break a model. If you were in my previous live stream where we talked about different iterations of my Amtrak Horizon coach, I went through several variations of the compressor unit for the air conditioning and, you know, the heating, AC, HVAC unit. And one of the things that I mentioned in that is there was a lack of smoothing groups or consistent smoothing groups. And when I finally fixed all the smoothing groups and made them consistent with each other, it was a world of difference on the compressor unit. So it's good to have an understanding, be conscious of it, and learn to work with it. Because sometimes you'll see people make, like, say, a P42 model, or better yet, let's take an F7 unit for instance. It has a very smooth, rounded nose, and you will see some models that have a bunch of different polygons on it. Let's see here. We'll go searching for an F7 unit. Might not have an F7 unit. F7. Nope. I'm trying to find an F7 to show you guys now. Well, anyways, you kind of get the idea. The nose of it is very rounded, and you will get some models where someone will like go all out and they will increase the tries significantly. And then you will also have people who can be kind of conscious about it and lower the polygon count significantly, but still have it look really smooth. And it's because of smoothing groups that do that. So if you see someone who's just learning to model, you can kind of see, or if you look at a model in the early stages, like on this one, I didn't apply smoothing groups until it was like completely done with the frame model itself. And like you saw here, this didn't have any smoothing groups applied either beforehand. So just keep that in mind. But some people will fully make a model, and then when they go to export it into trains, you'll notice it's got all these hard edges on it, and it's got very distinct, it'll be very distinct. with how rough it kind of looks. And not rough in the sense like, oh, it's just a bad model, but like the actual model itself is rough looking. A good example of this is my Switch machine that I made. I'll show you that, and we'll take a look at kind of like the lack of smoothing groups on it. Because that was one of my earlier models that I actually baked and exported into trains and got it working. So I'm gonna go to orthographic. I'll go to high quality, let that kind of simmer down. And I think where it really, well, let's just do not high quality, we'll do standard. I think where it really stands out are the edges here. You can kind of see there's a distinct edge there. I might have actually gone back and fixed this after the fact, because when I exported it into the game, I noticed it and I was like, wow, that looks really crappy. I better fix it. Let me see. I probably actually have some screenshots of it in game. Because I remember I did take some pictures of it, or some screenshots of it in game. Yeah, okay. So you can kind of see it right here. So you can see boom, 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 boom. There's very distinct edging going on this in multiple places. It looks really kind of dumb, but you kind of get the idea and kind of what I'm talking about when I say smoothing groups are important, because it makes or breaks this. You either see this like really obvious edging on it, or you don't. And again, this works really well on four-sided cylinders. So you can get away with a lot. It just depends. So, anywho, I digress from that. For now, we're just finishing up this journal box, or the bearing box, or whatever. And I'm just going to make sure I got everything fairly well represented. We'll look at some actual screenshots too, just to double check. Yeah, I think it's just a box, to be honest. And then there's a piece that kind of sits in there, and I need to figure out how I'm gonna do that. So, if you're watching this thinking that I want to make bogies for the rest of my life too, think again. Think again, boss. Trying to get this figured out real quick. So, bless me. What we're gonna do now is we're gonna make the thing that kind of supports the springs. And I'm thinking I can get away with like actually modeling some springs. let's take a look too. Import. No. Let's see. Import. Merge. Might actually have some 3DS parts. Nope. I don't have that. There. However many times I start doing this. Okay. I think I can just reuse this piece. It's kind of the spring holder. And I'll just have to not make it look bad. Or I'll just have to kind of even it out a little bit. Yeah, so I think if I just do that, and then I clone it. Actually, I'm gonna rotate this first. 180. Okay. So I can do it like that. I think that'll work perfectly for what we're going for here, actually. So that piece is done, kind of. We'll have to go and do a little bit of changing of some things to make it match up with the actual body style that we're using. And then I need to make a spring. And I gotta remember where it is. There it is. Okay, so about 5.5 inches. We definitely need a couple more turns. Okay. So that's about the height that we want. 2/4 of a turn, and I will actually even this out. So we need 2 inches. So it's about 2.5 inches. Sounds about right. Turn that down to like 10 turns. And then we do need to make the wire diameter fairly small. And let's see, get some reference photos here. Just to see like how tight the turns are on it. Two inch. Set 1.25 inch diameter. Isolate the selection. And then I need to make the diameter a little bit bigger, 5.75 inches. Dang, 1 inch. 0.5 inch. Too small. 0.75 inch. Getting close to being a little bit too big. What was I going to say about rotating this around some? Oh, so it's actually less turns than I thought it was. It's about 2 turns at 2 inches of height. I'll probably get away with about an inch right there. And isolate. Okay. Let's try 3 turns with a height of 2.5. Springs are fun. They're just, they are what they are. There. I think that ought to do it. Pretty happy with that. Although I did just realize something. These little platforms do need to be a little bit bigger, because they do kind of outreach just a little bit. And if I'm mistaken, yeah, I probably am. Springs are like, I don't know. They're fun. They're fun to do. Not really. I mean, I really just don't care for doing springs. At the same time, I mean, when you're going for that little bit of extra detail, I mean, oh, and I just also realized something too. That sits a little bit lower. Regardless. Okay. So yeah. Not really gonna be able to say that much. Our next lesson is going to be mapping cylinders in weird shapes. We're going to be using my favorite tool, the peel unwrap. So essentially what we're doing here is we're setting the seam lines where this thing is going to unwrap. And I'm placing the seam line in the center where it won't be seen, so you won't see a weird unsightly edge. And then I'll just select all that, reset the peel, and we're left with this thing, which isn't terrible. I'm going to open up text tools. If you don't have text tools, I highly recommend that you get it. It's a free add-on for 3ds Max, and it is game changer. Helps you align stuff properly, and it gives you a good tools for mapping stuff. So already there's not a whole lot of deformation in this. However, I like to take it kind of to the next level just to make sure that we're good to go. So it's important to remember that when we texture things, that it is all in pixels. The way that pixels work is they're little squares. So that's what's being read here. When you have weird deformations in your UV unwrap, like these edge segments, some of your programs, the computer's going to have a hard time like reading what's going on here, and you get some oddities with your texturing. And you can kind of see that there's some texture stretching here. See, like this line is jagged and then goes straight down. This in theory should fix all of that, because what it's doing is it's lining everything up as an individual square, straight up and down. And that's, again, it's important to remember that's how pixels typically work, is in a straight up and down fashion. So we're still going to have some deformation, it looks like, but for the most part, I think that's livable. I can live with that. It still looks fairly good. Looks like I might have missed a line. There. Okay. And this is another thing, with your workflow, I highly suggest that you do this before you do any copy and pasting of anything. This is going to save you a whole lot of time, because now this spring is already mapped the way we want it to be mapped, and every time we copy this spring over, it will be perfect, essentially. So I can close out of that now. So everything's ready to go, pretty much, and that's what we're setting up there. And what I'll actually do is I'll do a little mirror modifier here. And I'll just have these on the reverse side, just for a little added, fun. And then what I'll do is I'll go unwrap. And the thing you have to remember is when you mirror something, and this is a good reason to have this text tools, is it provides this little graph or this grid to use. It does flip your UVWs as well. So we'll select this and we'll just hit this mirror vertically, selected objects, and that'll set it perfect. So now I'll move that down so it's under the other one when we go and attach everything. Unhide and isolate. Okay, this is what we're doing then. Alright. Unhide all. Okay. There. Now, another thing that I'm going to do, and this isn't necessary that we do this, hide unselected. Ooh, actually, I want to just do an isolate selection. Go to standard, we're going to make a cylinder, and I'm going to put it in the center here. Six-sided cylinder, perfect enough. Okay, like I said, we are trying to be semi-conscious of our poly count to an extent. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, 10. 10 cents. Oh well. Let's try 3 inches. Okay, just like that. So this is sort of representative of, you know, they'll have 2 springs inside of each other. So this is just going to be something kind of like a placeholder of that. We don't need to actually model a second spring in this model, because that would be kind of silly if you ask me. Because this is, if anything ain't going to get seen, it's going to be this. So 6 sides, perfect enough. And then we'll even go as far. We'll select this top edge here real quick and bring that down. Put it right there. If I do my wireframe override. I don't think we'll be able to see, kind of see the tops of the springs in there. So we'll go ahead and actually fix that. And that'll just kind of help our poly count a little bit. Let's see, how are we gonna do this? So we'll go ahead. I mean, you have to be looking straight down that thing for you to be able to see that at all. What I can do here is if I select this bottom plane, and we'll go and do this on this other one as well, because it's the same thing on the other side. I'll just take this and raise it above it, and that is no big deal. There. So as I was working on this here, it's all about just reading shapes have a good time. So selection, we'll do that, and I'll go right around here, and I'm just going to make sure that this has a single nail. Unwrap UVW. This isn't going to be seen at all, so unwrap UVW. I'm going to go to the UV editor. And I mean, this is already unwrapped. So boom, done with that. And isolate. Now, go ahead, clone that. And move it right there. So it's just kind of to add a little bit more depth to it. It's a fun time. Fun time. So I think that's a lot of the major progress that I really wanted to make on this specific piece right now. I'll take this and just kind of expand that out a little bit more. Like that. Okay. So I'm thinking that is going to be kind of the main progress that I wanted to make on this. I'm going to be doing some mapping, get this copied over to the other 3 pedestals, and then just kind of continue doing a little bit more work on it. So anywho, thank you for joining me for this live stream. I appreciate it. Leave a like, comment, subscribe if you want to, and let me know what other kinds of videos you guys want to see in the future. So thank you for